adding to that, in regards to this notion of testing presidential power, when Donald Trump came in, he made these sweeping changes and adjustments in regards to domestic policy. And one of those things was to effectively freeze funding for many of the organizations that operate in the U.S. government. That also included funding for Joe Biden's Build Back Better plan, that included funding for things like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, USAID, but there were other agencies that Donald Trump effectively killed or eliminated-ish by ending and putting a freeze on federal funding. All right. A judge comes out, because this is being tested all across the United States, and says, well, stop. You can't do that. You don't have the power to do that as president. You need to stop. There's a freeze. And something needs to be done in regards to some kind of evaluation on whether or not this is legal. This is legit. The judge involved in this points out that Trump is blowing off his ruling. So right here, a federal judge said that President Donald Trump violated the order to lift the blanket freeze on federal spending and again directed the administration to release the funds. This comes as prosecutors in nearly half of the country sued the administration for withholding medical research funding. White House correspondent Laura blah, 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 right here. Today, a federal judge said that President Donald Trump violated his order to lift a blanket freeze on federal spending and again directed the administration to release the funds. That is top prosecutor in nearly half of the country just won a temporary legal victory restoring medical research funding that was stripped last week. White House correspondent, right here, let's jump. It says, so in the sweeping freeze of federal funding, District Judge John McConnell said in a ruling today that Trump administration continued freeze of those funds, quote, violate the plain text of an order, unquote, that he previously issued, saying that they needed to stop and that they needed to release all of those funds. And Judge McConnell called Donald Trump's actions, quote, likely unconstitutional, unquote, and said that the freeze continues to, quote, cause irreparable harm to, quote, much of the country. Now, he didn't hold any government officials in contempt, criminal contempt, but hinted that he may if they continue to violate the order. So what are the limits of presidential power? Is being questioned here. And the fact that Trump is like, and by the way, J.D. Vance said this openly, that maybe they should just violate the order. What does it matter? That's disturbing. And this is going to be a test of presidential power. Now, here's the rub. Congress passed that law. So all of these organizations and institutions that he's effectively trying to destroy are part of U.S. law. The same law that allows the president to rule, meaning if you blow off, you can't pick and choose. And I know presidents do. But there are limits, maybe, to presidents picking and choosing like this. The second part to this is Congress. Congress passed these laws. So what does Congress have to say about the president allowing these organizations to effectively go belly up without any support? Now, I am not one of those people who believe that this is the last presidential election to ever take place. I think that's nonsense. So what does it mean when a Democratic president comes in and the priorities of the previous president get ignored? And I mean ignored to the point where they just don't fund those entities, don't do whatever the president put into place. What does that mean? We're in a weird spot as Americans. It is very bizarre to have a situation where the American public elects one person to go and do a job. And you know the person is going to do stuff that's not part of that job. Okay, fair enough. Next president comes in. And the response is, I'm just going to fundamentally ignore everything that the previous president did. Not just ignore it. I'm going to scrub it from the records. I want these policies gone. Now, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was made under Obama. So this is not even just a Joe Biden rubbing away thing. He is doing this across the board in breach of the judge's ruling. And Congress has yet to say anything about the fact that the president is ignoring congressional law, things that Congress itself had voted on and passed. They are ignoring it. Now, this goes back to the original conversation I had with Tulsi Gabbard being passed, basically being passed through for the director of national intelligence. There were Republicans. They had issues with Tulsi Gabbard. Those Republicans piped down, and those Republicans voted for Gabbard to go through. So when we're talking about presidential power, it doesn't just extend to this idea of getting somebody confirmed. It seems to also go to this notion of whether or not Donald Trump is going to be able to blow off court order, what the court is going to do if he continues to blow off court order, and whether Congress is just going to stand aside as the president fundamentally ignores laws that the same Congress passed. Because that seems to be what is occurring right now. Trump seems to be blowing off law. The judge points out that he's blowing off the law, and the law continues to be blown off. What is the courts going to do? Will they hold someone in criminal contempt? Will they put people in jail? The judge doesn't seem to be there yet, but is at the very least leaving it open. And I would imagine the judge feels some kind of way, questioning her own power in this context, or his own power in this context. Meaning, yeah, you're a federal judge. And yeah, under normal circumstances, when you make a ruling like this, you would expect that ruling to be honored. But as a judge, you're also stuck with this idea of, what if I go further? What if I hold someone in criminal contempt? Then what? Will the person be arrested? What happens if the person is not arrested? All of these, we're in a weird space. I just said that way. We're in a very weird space. And before I get to my guest, who's going to be joining us at 9 o'clock,